Hello everyone, welcome to QA Secret. In this video, we'll discuss on what is Xpath, how to write Xpath, access in Xpath and comparison between Xpath and CSS Selector. So let's start. What is Xpath? So Xpath is a powerful tool for navigating XML-like documents including HTML pages. So it provides a range of functions to create advanced queries to select nodes. Okay, so there are two types of XPath. One is absolute XPath and one is relative XPath. So absolute XPath start with a slash symbol to traverse the DOM from the root node. So if you see an example of absolute XPath, I have given HTML slash body slash a. So it will start with slash. So it will start searching from the root node. So while absolute XPath is easy to create, but it is more error prone because any small change in the page layout can cause the locator to fail. So as a generic rule, it is discouraged to use absolute XPath on Selenium because it is more error prone to break the locator actually. So if there is a change in the DOM structure, it will fail, it will not able to locate the element. So here if you see, this is the syntax for writing an absolute XPath and coming to the relative XPath start with the double slash. So double slash means it will point to anywhere in the web page. So this is the syntax of writing absolute XPath, double slash tag name, and in the square bracket you have to mention @attribute is equal to attributes value. So this approach allows you to select element based on their tag name and attributes values regardless of their position in the DOM. So as it can search anywhere in the web page, so it is less error prone because it will directly search that element by using his tag name and attribute value. So there are multiple ways how we can write XPath. So here in this table I have mentioned a few of the syntaxes. So using id attribute we can write XPath. So here I put a double slash and star means any tag name. So and @id equal to this value. So I have written one sample HTML page for our practical. So let's go to that sample web page. So this is one sample web page I have written, and this web page we are there. So if you right click and click on inspect, and you can do command F or control F in Mac, and I'll just zoom so that it will be, the font will increase, and here I have written one XPath. So here if you see, if I am hitting return, it is giving me single element. So here is this element, if you see, the ID is equal to user, so that's why I wrote a double slash star @ID is the attribute and the value is equal to user, and it is selecting single element and it is highlighting in the web page. So let me close this window. Similarly, we can find the XPath using class name. So the syntax will be double slash star @class is equal to class name. So here I have written one sample XPath for you. So let's go to that web page and we'll paste here. Okay, so here if you see, it is highlighting the select button, submit button, sorry. So in this submit button, if you see, the class name is btn outline primary mt3. So here I used @class is equal to class name, and it is highlighting the element. Similarly, we can check this @attribute equal to value. So instead of ID or class name, if there is any attribute, you can use the same thing, and if you want to mention the tag name also, you can do that. So in the same XPath, if I mention button here instead of star, it will highlight point the same element also. So if you see, it is pointing the same element. So if it is if the attribute or class name is same but the tag name is different, then you can use this approach. You can mention the tag name, and after that in square bracket @attribute equal to value, you can use that one. Similarly, if there are multiple function like contents where you can write XPath using the partial value. So here I have used contents function. So let's see. So here in the same XPath, if I use contents function, I just paste this btn, then it should find that element. So I'll just remove this XPath, and here I write a button, and in the square bracket I use contents function at the rate class is the attribute and contents btn, so it is also pointing to the same element. So this is one way of writing this using contents function. Similarly, we can write using start with function also. Start with is another function that will select the element by using the starting value. So instead of contents, we can write start with. So because this class is started with btn, so you can write starts. So this is also working. So this is also the same thing. So start with is another way we can write the function. Similarly, selecting element with a specific attribute. So suppose in the element one attribute is there which is unique to that element, then in that case you can directly use double slash tag name, and in the square bracket attribute. So that way also you can select the element. So I have written one sample example here, so I'll just paste that one. So here what I did, I have written double slash input in the square bracket @id. So what it will do, it will select all the elements having tag name input and id attribute actually. So having id attribute, so if you see here it is showing 10 elements having the same thing. So here this is the highlighted element input, and the tag name is input, and id is there here, and one of the attributes, so it is selecting that element. So if you click next, it is selecting those elements. So all these elements have input tag and id attribute. Similarly, we can use not function to select any input element having not having the id attribute. So we can use this way also. So here we have used not function. So if you mention, so double slash input in the square bracket not function, and in the bracket @id. So this will select an input element where the id attribute is not there. So here this is one of the example. Here if you see, this is input text class, and here no id attribute, so that those elements are getting selected. Okay. So similarly, we can write XPath with parent reference. So we can write double slash parent tag attribute equal to value slash, then the child node tag name and attribute equal to value. So I can give an example. So here suppose okay, so let me go to this element. So you can inspect here, it will come to here. So here we can write like this. So what I want to write with respect to parent, so div, and in the square bracket I can write @. So div @name equal to user. Okay, and this is selecting the parent element. Then I can write slash. Here there are two child nodes, so I can write label. So I can write if there are two labels, so I can just write id equal to user and bracket. So it will select the username field actually. So that is what with respect to parent child also we can write. So I am just copying this XPath, and here I am pasting this one as a example. So I just paste this one. So here selector by position. So generally selecting elements with a specific index. So suppose you wrote one XPath like this. So I'll explain this one. So how it is, how we'll select based on the index. So suppose if you write /div, it will select all the elements having div, having tag as div. So suppose you want to select the first div, then you can enclose with this bracket, and in the square bracket you can put the index 1, so it will select the first div. So this is how you can select based on the index value. So that is what it is mentioned. So there are two function actually, one is last and one is first, and one is position. So using that one also you can select. So suppose if I write div and I'll write last function, so it will select the last div actually. So it will select the last div. And if I write fast, let's see, is there any function fast, let's see. No, there is no function like fast. So instead of that we can write a position function. There is a function called position. So you can write position and you can mention position equal to 1, then it will select the first element. So using position function you can select the first element. Similarly, if you write position is equal to 2, it will second select a second element. If you write position equal to 3, it will select the third element. Okay, so this is what we covered already. So sort selector by position also we covered. Similarly, you can use text function. Using text function also we can select the locator having text. So let's see one example. So here I have written one example. Let's see. So I am pasting this XPath here. So here I am selecting one button element where the text present is selenium. So here /button text function equal to selenium. So if you are using a function, then no need to mention @. So you have to write a text function equal to selenium. So this is this is one example where we can select text element. So similarly you can use normalize space, one function is there. So basically it is similar to text function, but it will remove it will ignore the leading and trailing spaces. So the same function actually normalize space. So here also if you see here there is no attribute, and as you is using function, so normalize space, it will remove the space and it is highlighting that element. So this is better than text function because it will remove those spaces. So I always use this I always prefer to use normalize space over text. So and we can use also contents function by using text method. So we can call text function inside contents. So this is also doing the same thing. So here /button and in the square bracket contents, and I am using text and I am putting the value selenium and it is highlighting the element. So this is also doing the same thing. And similarly we can use start with, we already tested this one. So here start with function also doing same thing, but it will just check the starting value. So are the /button start with, and here we are writing @class. So whenever you are using an attribute, then you have to use @, and whenever you are using a function, then no need to mention @. So that is the simple logic. So if you see, it is highlighting the element. Similarly, we can use a logical operator. So suppose you want to select two elements having @name is equal to message, one attribute, and class is equal to that, then you can use logical operators. So there are two logical operators we know. Or and means there are here I am giving example of two or and. So we'll just take this one. So here if I see here I just took one element here, this is highlighting this element where the name is equal to message. So name is equal to message and class is equal to form control. So here the name is equal to message and class is equal to form control. So any one of these condition matches, then it will select those elements. So if you see there are around 7 elements. So here I just okay, those are gone. So okay, this is one of the example. Here the class name is form control, so it is also highlighting that element. So this is how OR works, and if you do and then both the conditions should be true, then it will select those elements. So that's why it is selecting only one element having both class name as form control and the name is equal to message. So because and condition becomes true when both the condition or operand will be true. So here name is equal to message and class is equal to form control, both the condition are true, that's why it is highlighting that element. So we can use a logical operator also. We can also use in this way also. Let me try. I just enclose with this bracket and I'll enclose this one with bracket, so I can use pipe symbol. So I'll just write /star. So here also this pipe symbol also is doing the work of OR, and we can also use this way also. So this one also you can use. Okay, so I'll just put another thing and we can use this one. So the same thing actually, so you can use this pipe symbol. So this is also doing the work of OR actually. So this is another way of writing. So this is logical operators and wildcard characters. I have just noted few points. So star is one of the most used wild characters in Xpath in Selenium WebDriver. We can use it instead of the tag name and attribute. So whenever if the tag name is unique, you can use a star to avoid, because they or you if you want to select all the elements ignoring those tag name, you can use star. So /star will matches all the elements present in the HTML document, and here they give one example. /div/star matches all the immediate elements inside the div tag. So so basically we can see this one. Let me see if we have anything. So if you see, so here if you see inside div also it is selecting anything. So all the div it is selecting, as well as inside those values also it is selecting. So it will select all the immediate elements present inside the div tag. Similarly input to it matches all the elements with the input tag and have at least one attribute value may or may not be present. So if you want to select any input element actually if you want to select an element with input tag and having at least one attribute, you can use this one. So this is applicable to any tag name. So instead of input you have to put the tag name, and similarly this one also matches all the elements. This is one this one will matches all the element which having at least one attribute. So this is actually self-explanatory, so you can use this one also. And here I have written a note. We can use sign attributes. Function do not need sign. We do not, so that is what we already explained. So function, if you are using a function inside the XPath, they don't need sign. So here there is one example. So here one tag is there, button type is equal to button and value is selenium. So here XPath we can write like this. So if you want to select the value selenium, then we can write like this. So double slash button slash that directly that text function. So if you paste here, it will select the selenium, playwright and cypress. So all the button, if they contains the text, it will select all the elements. So if you see here, it is selecting all the elements: selenium, playwright, cypress, and submit button, because all these button contains the text. So this way also we can write the XPath. Similarly, next we will go to case insensitive XPath. But basically XPath is case sensitive, so we can use a translate function to make it case insensitive. So suppose there is a requirement where the value of this text continuously changes, and it contains suppose capital and small like this, then we can use the translate function. So here you can put here I mentioned the syntax. So the what the syntax tells, so you double slash tag name, I'm here using text function, and the source content, what is the initial content value, and what do we need to change to that value, means if it is capital, do we need to change to small or not. So those things we have to mention, the source content and target case content you have to place, and after that you have to place the final value that will identify that element. So I have already written the example. So if you go here and if you paste here, it will select the selenium. So here it will ignore, even though this element contains capital or small, it will select the selenium only. So here I am using translate function. So this is one important thing. So you can use like this only. So we can use also the attribute to values length actually. So you can use a string length function to calculate the length of that attribute, and we can uniquely find that element. So if you use, I already used one example, let's see. So here I'll delete this XPath and I will paste this one. So suppose here I am taking one input element where the length of the attribute here I am taking the attribute is name, so length is 4, so that's why it is selecting this element. So here name is equal to file, so the attribute the file length is 4, so that's why it is selecting this element. So string length function also, using string length function also we can write XPath. Okay, and we already discussed like for selecting all the elements you can use double slash star. Then the next thing we'll discuss access in XPath. So what is access in XPath, and when it is actually used actually. So XPath access are used to identify elements that periodically change or refresh their attributes by their relationship, like a parent, child, sibling, based on the independent element. So suppose in your application, if there is one element which changes the value dynamically every time with respect to an independent element. So suppose you have a column called value, and there is a column called amount. Okay, so the value of that amount is always changing. So in that case we can use XPath axis to write the XPath depending on that independent element called amount. Okay, so here it is mentioned already, I written this one. So access refer to the node on which element are lying relative to independent element. We could traverse in both forward and reverse direction. So we can travel in both forward and reverse direction, and axis refers to the element whose values are actually changing with respect to an independent element. So there are a list of axis I have mentioned. So child axis, parent axis, self axis, ancestor or self, descendant or self, following sibling, preceding sibling, and attributes. So already I mentioned all these axes, and this is the definition. You can also read. This is what access is all about, and we will better understood by doing the example. So what this child do. So child specifies all the child element of the current element. So suppose I am taking this example now. Okay, so I'll paste here. So here I took one independent element which value is not changing. So this is we am taking div @name is equal to user. Okay, and I want to select all the child elements of this div. Then you can write div in the square bracket @name is equal to user slash child, and you have to put this double colon actually, and after that if you put a star, then it will select all the child actually. So if you want to select one specific child, you just put the tag name of that child. So I want to select input, then I'll just put input here. So it will select that input element with respect to the div user. So this is called child access. Similarly, you can select you can use parent. So what is parent? The parent access select the parent of the current node. So the parent node may be either root node of the element node. The root node has no parent. So let's understood by doing one simple example. So suppose here we are using this we are selecting this input id equal to username. So this element we are selecting. So if you want to select this div name actually, so with respect to this username, then how we will write? So what we will do, we can just write uh, double slash input in the square bracket id is equal to user name bracket close. So it is selects this input tag, and I want to select this div. So what I can do, I can write parent. So because I want to select the parent element of this, so I just write parent and I put div. So it will select the parent of this username. So this the parent is this div. So this will select. So if you do not want to mention div, we can I think write star. So if you write star also, it will do the same thing. So this is parent axis, and similarly self. So self always select the current node. Actually it always finds only one node that represent the self element. So self means pointing to himself only. So here if I write self, so it will point to himself only. So it will not point to anyone, it will point to himself only. So that is the self axis. So ancestor, so ancestor axis select all ancestor element including parent, grandparent, great grandparent, etc. of the current node. This axis always contains the root node unless the current node is the root node. Okay, so suppose here if I wrote ancestor, what it will happen? So if you see ancestor and split slash, so it will go to the topmost element HTML tag actually. Okay, because ancestor by default here in the nodes also I mentioned. So this axis always contain the root node unless the current node is the root node. So, okay, so if I want to select the image, suppose I want to select the body, because I want to traverse up to body, then I can write up to body here. So it will select body. So if you want to go beyond the parent, then you can use ancestor, and you can give that attribute name, and it will select that element. Okay, so this is ancestor axis. So ancestor and self, so if you write ancestor and self, then it will select both ancestor and the current axis. So this is an example I written. So it is the same thing, so we can paste, and here if you see there will be two here. Okay, so I have to write slash actually, sorry. So here so it is selecting all the ancestor and and the self element. Okay. Then we have to go to descendant axis. So descendant means it will select all the descendant elements, children, grandchildren of the current node. Let's take an example. So here already I have written. So if you select div of 2, so here this is the div and I am selecting descendant. Then what it will do, if you select this one, it is selecting all the descendant elements. So if you see, it is going down 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 down, so it is selecting all the descendants. So it will select all the descendant children, grandchildren of the current node. So of the current node it will select all the children and grandchildren. Similarly descendant on self, so it will select the self element as well as the descendant elements. So if you paste here, so this is one, and if you see, it is going to select everything. So it is selecting all the elements. So it is selecting children, it is selecting himself, and it is selecting grandchildren also. So following axis selects all elements nodes in the current document after closing the tag of the current node. So it will select all the elements after the current node. So suppose I am taking this example. So this is an example. So if I see this one, so it is going to the next input. So it is not it starts searching after this input actually. So if you go here, go back, so here this tag is done. So after that it is coming to the next div and this input element. So it started searching that one. So if I expand it, you will get to know. So if I go here, this is where, and after closing tag it is selecting all the following elements. So it will coming to this one actually. So if you go click and the next one, so it is coming to one because this is the following one. So it is the same sibling. So it is coming to this one actually, this one, this element. So that is all about following axis. So following axis select all the elements in the document after closing tag of the current node. So following sibling axis, so following sibling selects all the sibling nodes after the current node at the same level. So this is an example. So this is one of one. So because I put the div, so if I, so because here the element only one sibling is there, so that's why it is selecting that one. So if I mention div, it will also pointing the same element because only one sibling is there for this user. Okay. So this is following sibling and preceding. So preceding axis selects all the nodes that come before the current node in the document except the ancestor, attribute nodes, and namespace method. So if I am selecting this one example, so password, so password is this one, let's select this one. So input, so I want to select only label, then it will select the just before that one. So if I count this much, it is selecting this one. So if I select preceding, and it will going to the corresponding before sibling, and it will select that label actually. So it will go to the previous div and it is coming to this pointing to this label. So that is what preceding is all about. The preceding axis select all nodes that come before the current node. So जो भी node है it will select that before that current node in the document except the ancestor, attributes and namespace node. Similarly, preceding siblings, the preceding sibling axis select all siblings before the current node. Let's take an example to understand the concept of preceding siblings. So preceding siblings, it will select only preceding siblings, not under that children. So if I do here same thing, this is a good example actually. So it is not coming to the down, so it will select the div only. So before this one, this is the current element, and before that this element is there, the preceding siblings of div if you mention, then it will select this one. Okay. And attribute axis, so this axis selects the element node on the basis of identifier attribute attribute of the current node. So if the current node is not an element, then the axis is empty. This is what we already used by using name is equal to q. So if you use / input name is equal to q, then it will select this one. So this way also we can actually write. So let's see one example. You can write, I can modify this one. Let's try if it is working or not. Okay, so here we can write attribute colon. See, this is also working. So it will, instead of we can write like this also. So I am just pasting this one. So this is the example. So I think we have covered all the access, and I have also given the example. So please go through the notes and do the practical. I think you will understand the concepts, this XPath axis, and this is in real-time application. You will find it will be very useful, this axis concept. So and in interview also they will ask this question, what is XPath axis, and how to select parent, how to select child, how to select ancestor, how to select following siblings. Okay, so these things are there, very simple concept. You can, once you read, you will get to know. And I just put one comparison table to compare between CSS selector and XPath. So just for our information, so CSS selector is more concise and XPath is less concise. CSS selector is easy to read and XPath expressions are more difficult to read, but CSS are faster because it is executed by the browser itself internally. So it is faster, but XPath will be a bit slower. But CSS selector is less powerful. XPath you can write more complex expressions, so it is more powerful. So for visibility purpose, like CSS selector can only locate elements that are directly visible in the rendered page, but XPath expression can locate the elements that are not directly visible in the rendered page. And complexity, CSS selector are less complex and XPath are more complex. So this is for only theory. So if you want, you can remember these points. So this is the comparison table, and that's all for the today's session. And I will attach the notes in the video description. You can find the notes as well. So if you have any question, please provide your comment in the comment box. I'll reply to your comments. And thank you so much for watching. See you in the next video.